guest is Mrs. Sharon Inglefield, and she's president of Arrive Alive, and she's worked, well, her background is in real estate, and where she's been made her mark since 1978. She's a director at Massey Realty. And given that 83% of all fatal crashes in our country are young men under the age of 35 years, as well as Bishop and I have tagged this segment Drunk and Speeding to Death.
Yes, indeed.
Because according to the stats on the Arrive Alive website, 55% of the main contributing factors to fatal road crashes in Trinidad and Tobago, 55% as a consequence of speeding, 30% as a consequence of alcohol. So when you add that together, you get 85%.
But I'm fine because I like driving my car with my beer in one hand, tongue in cheek.
No longer. You're not going to get to
Thank
do that
goodness.
at all.
Thank goodness. Yes.
Not at all. Mrs. Inglefield, welcome to 107.7 and Brunch.
Thank you for having us on.
Thank you for coming.
We are thankful.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
Thankful for a lot of work that you're doing. This new motor vehicle authority that's being proposed to replace the licensing office, there are a number of proposals that's in the bill before us. But before we go to that, we want to deal with the real problem. 55% of all fatalities as a result of speeding. We don't have the infrastructure to deal with regular driving, much more for speeding. What is this? A case of enforcement is what we're looking at, or ignorance on the part of the driver, or both?
I think both. As you may know, the recent speed management legislation was passed. So we now have a law that allows our officers to arrest people by technology, being the speed gun. Mm-hmm. Those LiDAR guns, VEMCOT had sent out a request for proposal for the guns, having the law being passed. And we are still waiting to see those guns in the hands of our police officers, because you cannot expect our police officers to be jumping in front of our vehicles at 80 kilometers an hour and faster to track negligent, reckless drivers. So that they need these speed guns and they need them fast. The law was passed. So again, yes, it is enforcement, but it's not as a result of our police officers not doing their job, but rather our police officers not having the technology and the equipment in their hands. And you see, a lot of people don't understand these things. The fact is that we often get criticized. We have enough laws. What you all pushing for laws? Why are you all pushing for all these laws? Well, we have laws, but we don't have the laws that allows our police officers to do their jobs effectively.
Unfortunately, we can ask for laws, but not will.
Exactly.
Because if the legislation is passed and the money is not put out to acquire these things, or the haste is not attached to the legislation, it makes a joke of doing the thing in the first place.
Which is why we sound repetitive whenever we're interviewed, because I keep saying that we need those speed guns and we need them fast. We need to focus on those issues. People are dying because of a lack of speed guns in the hands of our police officers.
This is the silly season. Everybody's giving up everything. Are you making your claim now? Are they reacting to it? This is the time to make the noise.
I complimented the minister, and I continue to compliment the minister to bring this new bill to Parliament and through the Senate. It's a draconian piece of legislation, but it fills numbers of gaps. I've told him he will go down in our history books. They will go down in our history books if this bill comes into law, because you're talking about lives, you're talking about people dying, something that's preventable, something that's avoidable.
I'm going to acquiesce to Sharmain, because she oftentimes tells me that I speed ahead too far with the quantum leaps, but I want to discuss that bill. But let me rein my horse in until she finishes her content.
No, because I'm still on speed guns, and I do remember not long ago there was a big press display for media of police officers with their speed guns on Arpita Avenue and using it, and then we heard nothing about it again.
Exactly.
So what is causing the gap?
Well, the causing of the gap, I can only assume, is a lack of funds. I really don't know. That's a question you need to ask the minister himself or the government themselves. Because the law was passed. The police officers have been out there practicing with all kinds of guns, from LiDAR guns to laser guns to all kinds, because they have an array of all kinds of guns. But if we are getting these LiDAR guns, they are the best. We will be so far ahead with these LiDAR guns, because it allows the police officers not only to stop you by gun, but to give you your ticket immediately.
Is this a case of... I'm sorry.
Yeah, sorry.
So the gun tracks the vehicle at a certain speed. It videos the vehicle and the license plate, and the police officer that's lower down the road is able to stop you during a roadblock and give you a ticket immediately via the technology and a laptop in his vehicle. So it immediately goes, the gun is able to video, to take the license plate, to track the driver who may own that car, and the actual current person who is behind the wheel is given the ticket.
The president of Arrive Alive, Sharon Inglefield, is our guest this morning. And I don't know, maybe the coffee was bad. I had Jamaican Mountain coffee. Hello, Blue Mountain. I needed something stronger than that because maybe I'm not getting this. Now, there are a couple of areas in this that are really useful. I am disquieted greatly by the area that says the driver has a responsibility at the risk of a fine if he hits somebody to take that person to a hospital. I have a problem because the best medical advice I have heard all the time is that if somebody is injured, you don't want to move them unless you are so qualified for risk of creating further damage. Who was talking to the minister on this?
Well, don't forget, you need to look at the whole bill. So that although you're saying that, it really is that if you are not able to take them, you are to stay there and call for the ambulance, because you cannot expect them to cover everything in the bill. It comes out in the rules and regulations. So the rules and regulations will support the bill. And therefore, what they're really talking to is, in fact, the hit and run that you're seeing all over the nation, so that you as a driver are responsible to stay there until some help comes to the scene.
You and your organization have me as an ally because you are our champion. So I am all the way with you on this. I am just trying to understand the part that says I am to pick that person up, conscious or unconscious, and take them to a hospital. I think it is a bad thing to start saying. You can say the hit and run, you must stay there. Yeah. And then we will do whatever. But the language on this, lest I misunderstood, is to me counterproductive and dangerous.
I need to look at that because I don't remember seeing that in the bill, to be very honest. I remember it be more a responsibility that the driver must stay on the scene of the collision if he has seriously injured someone or killed someone until help comes.
But that's standard law. That is standard law now, isn't it?
I don't remember seeing that he is to take them to a hospital. So I must look at that.
I did see that. I have that. What is it? The clause I'm referring to specifically is 215 of the bill that is proposed. But I want to get into the other one that a lot of maxi taxi drivers would have a problem with. A lot of parents would have problems with the question of having a TV in the car, in your vehicle. Now, if it's mounted where the front seat driver can see it, I will concur. This is crazy. It should not be. But if it's mounted in the middle of the vehicle that only the occupants of the back can locate it, why is that a problem?
Well, I mean, again, we're talking about distraction, and a lot of our people, I mean, that can come in time, but right now we have a problem with the competency of our drivers. Okay. Because let's face it, when you did your licensing exam, when I did mine, it's the same licensing exam that exists today, the same multiple choice exam. If you were to sit an exam in one of the first world countries that we wish to become, the better part of those first world countries being like the UK, the US, Canada, Sweden, who has the best safety record, they start off by training their drivers before giving them the go-ahead with regards talking on a cell phone, TVs in the car. That comes in later. So the first thing is to get our drivers competent. A proper theoretical and practical exam. And in some parts of the world, the exam is 8 and 10 hours. All right? Because you're talking about time management, risk management, defensive driving. You're talking about a certain number of hours by a licensed training instructor who teaches them to drive. You're talking about standards of practice. So again, I support that because we have so much distraction right now. We have those big, huge digital billboards. We have all the TNTech wires. We have the cellular. We have people in the car drinking. We have so much distraction. Plus, we lack competency. We lack experience. A heavy T. People are driving heavy Ts without a proper licensing.
No, you're quite right. And I didn't mean to make the cameras the issue. You're quite right. In the scheme of things, that's small.
The rollout has to be slower. We have allowed talking on the cell phone. Now, I completely disagree with talking on a cell phone, even a
Agreed.
wireless.
Agreed.
Because again, the stats show, and there's a big NGO now in the US who are advocating to ban cell phones completely. Singapore, you cannot talk on a cell phone when you're in a car, whether it's the hands-free or not.
Mrs. Inglefield, on your website, one of the things you have here is improving road design to protect vulnerable road users as well as the driving public. Can you address that in the Trinidad and Tobago context? Because there's also a part where you explain that there are some blind spots, for want of a better word, some parts of the roadway where in other countries as well they recognize and they pay attention to it. Can you address what you all mean by it and how can we work with it in Trinidad?
Okay, so in the United Nations calls it more forgiving roads because everybody, I mean, we're all human. We're going to err. We're going to make mistakes. We're going to drive too fast. We're going to do all of these things because we're human. We're not perfect. And therefore, the United Nations calls it more forgiving roads. So we make our roads more forgiving so that if we get into collision, if we err as human beings, the design of the road, the engineering of the road will protect us.
You know,
Very
one of the things that I
important.
find frightening is that you drive sometimes someplace. The road itself is the road. It can facilitate two cars. There is a drain on the left side that's open, and you are driving trying to take that corner. And the thing is, you either cause the other guy on your right-hand side to go against the wall, or you put your wheel in the drain. And that must be part of what you're talking about, because it's going to alter the way you navigate the intersection.
Which is why we continue to ask for an independent audit of all our roads. We need to track the black spots. I know the police are doing a good job at that, and so is the ministry. And we have some great engineers in there, don't get me wrong. We have fabulous highway engineers. We have in Trinidad and Tobago, both in private practice as well as in the ministry. Of course, workshops important to learn about forgiving roads. I am not the expert by any means. I am certainly imperfect. I'm not the expert. But I have lots of friends who are traffic engineers who help me understand. And I've been to the workshops as well, provided by the IRF and WHO. So again, the ministry, keep up your good work, but I'm begging no more signalized intersections at complex intersections where we have high volumes of traffic. We are killing people by designing like that.
Sharon Inglefield is our guest this morning. I am fully in support of a lot of things I see at your site. At your site, I wonder, it is a disease, drinking, which is the other contributory factor in the amount of deaths we're looking at. You are in favor of them going to AA. I am in favor of that too, because it is a disease. But at the same time, I wonder if we're not sending the wrong signal, as I saw in the case a month ago, where someone, a two-time offender, gets before the magistrate, and the magistrate decides that she's going to send them to AA. Now, that is not sufficient to me. I think that AA is a wonderful place to send it because it is a disease, but there must be something more punitive about people who drive, and it should be, you can do them in tandem. They don't have to be exclusive. You can make you pay, that you understand the seriousness, the gravity of the situation, and send you to get help at the same time.
All right, so just like I compliment the engineers and the police, I'm going to compliment the magistrates as well, because what we believe is that education and awareness is important. You'd be surprised in the number of people we run into at our classes, our Arrival Live classes, who do not recognize they have a problem with drinking, much less drinking and driving. They can't understand why they're treated like criminals when they're arrested by the police. Well, it's a criminal offense. To drink and drive is a criminal offense. You are now a criminal, because you could potentially kill someone on the nation's roads.
That's right.
And therefore, the Alcoholic Anonymous, the defensive driving, the Arrival Life classes that do a bit of defensive driving, but also about who we are as people, what choices we make, making you more aware of the choices you're making when you're behind that wheel of the car are also important. So fines are not the only thing to solve the problem. Education and awareness really important. And those Alcoholics Anonymous, they're doing a fantastic job because they are really making you aware of the fact that we have a problem in Trinidad, a cultural problem of drinking. I'll give you when some of the magistrates send the DUI offenders to us, we breathalyze them. That's the first thing we do. Some of them fail the breathalyzer test.
Even
now
when they're so-called sober.
And yes, and this is on a Thursday at 4 o'clock. It used to be a Monday at 4 o'clock. It's now a Thursday at 4 o'clock. So this is in the middle of the week at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and you're failing a breathalyzer test. And they tell us, well, we only had a few beers in the morning at lunchtime when we were eating lunch or whatever. But for you to now at 4 o'clock in the afternoon and on top of that, you're custodian of the court. So you're disrespecting the court.
Oh, talk about disrespecting the court.
know?
This man I talked about, who was a 2-time offender, sent to AA, said he found out he was getting horn. So he went and he drank. Now stop the foolishness, seriously. The magistrate should have just thrown that man and his attorney who allowed him to plead like that in a prison somewhere.
In our view, you revoke the license immediately for a second offender. I mean,
Thank you.
It should be revoked
Thank you.
in our view, with all due respect to the magistrates, because you're talking about somebody that could potentially kill our children, our grandchildren, our wife, our loved one, etc. He has a problem. He has a problem with alcohol. And therefore, or either that, or he just thinks he's bigger than the law. He's bigger than all of us. He's God, right? Because for him to then disrespect you as a magistrate, as a court, and go and drink and drive again, well, you either have an issue or it's complete and utter disrespect and arrogance. And therefore withdraw his license for 3 years, 2 years, even if he's a breadwinner, because he is a potential killer. So are we going to wait for him to use his vehicle like a weapon, as I keep saying, and kill someone?
It is a weapon, you're right.
And kill someone. So send him to Alcoholics Anonymous, send him to the defensive driving, but from now on, for 3 years, for 2 years, he needs to designate a driver, or he needs to get a chauffeur, he needs to take taxi. We have plenty maxi taxis out there and cars for hire. Let him take taxi. He has to stand the consequences of his actions.
If you
He's
prove
made a
that
bad choice.
you cannot be trusted with it, then we take it away from you. Sharon Inglefield is our guest this morning.
Sharon, you, Mrs. Inglefield.
No,
sorry.
Sharon.
You've your Arrive Alive, and you, a real trooper, as I keep saying. You've lobbied for just this motor vehicle authority as well, but before that, the National Road Safety Council. And I'm seeing here from your website as well that National Road Safety Council, if used effectively through collaboration and sharing, would be accountable for all serious collisions and fatalities in the country. How does the National Road Safety Council work? How does it work?
How it should work is that we have all the stakeholders on board. In other words, the stakeholders are what we call the 5 E's. Engineering, which is the Ministry of Works and Infrastructure. Education, because you want to build in road safety in the curriculum, so that's the Ministry of Education. You're talking about health, because they track the statistical data. The police, in other words, the enforcers. Then you have NGOs, not only Arrive Alive, the other road safety NGOs is ATIC, the insurance agencies, which are real important, the brokers as well as the companies, great ideas. And you're sharing information. So there's not this jealousy about the information. There's not this, one agency owns the information. We have to share the information to fix the issues. I might be passionate because, I lost somebody. So I understand. I lost not one person. I lost many people on the roads. My son, my cousin, my son, one of my son's best friends. But the fact is that we need some level-headed, educated people on the National Road Safety Council, and you network and you fix the issues. It's all about the issues, not about the personalities, not about the ego and the pride and the whatever else that's ruining our country. We need to fix the issues.
So I'm getting the impression that the National Road Safety Council was set up and it was appointed.
Yes. So and I think what happens is the ministry gets so bogged down with all the other issues that unfortunately council doesn't meet as often as it should. The minister, however, is still doing a great job at bringing this piece of legislation to Parliament through the lower house, the upper house. I mean, real important, because this bill, when it comes into law, will really fill many gaps. Many gaps will be filled, but the National Road Safety Council needs to be part of that. Because the big stakeholders, the decision makers, the PSA should be on that council.
Our point then is that we have to advocate even stronger for the speed guns to be in the hands of the police service. We have to. We all agree with you on the issue of drinking. I too agree in the area that drinking is a disease. I, however, slightly lean to the, I guess that would be the right, slightly lean to the right on the question of how lenient we are with the fines that I think should be really serious. Your organization is asking for the immediate amendment to the seatbelt law. Explain that.
The back seat. We want to see, I'll give you my cousin that was killed. She was actually in the backseat of a vehicle when a drunk driver smashed into that car. And that was actually in Miami. So, the fact is, it's not only about speeding and drinking, but the backseat. when you read articles about people being thrown out of the vehicle, as you probably know, that's because they didn't have on their seatbelt. It's really important that we strap in our children in the back seat because, I mean, although the law says 5 years and under, really and truly, if that airbag deploys, can you imagine a 13-year-old with a small frame in the front seat and the damage? My son died of internal hemorrhage. You could and his seatbelt was on, the airbag deployed. He was the driver. Physics were just against him. But can you imagine a young person in the front seat? So we want to see our children in the back seat. We want to see them buckled in. At 13, at 14, if you as a front seat driver as well as your front seat passenger are buckled in, and the ones in the back are not, and you're going at a certain speed, 80 kilometers, 50 kilometers, much less 120 kilometers. The people in the back seat, which is what happened, remember, to our Chief Justice, our AG.
Acting, yeah.
Right. He was killed, because of the lack of restraint in the back seat. His head hit the ceiling of the car.
Kangaloo, yes.
Yes, and that was really very sad. Besides the crossover collision, again, your United Nations More Forgiving Roads, the barriers were required to avoid that crossover collision. There was also the lack of the restraint in the back seat, the seat belt. So again, just like my son, the odds were against him. And again, it's education and awareness. We all need to read up on these things. We have computers, and instead of doing all the other things we do on computers, it's so important to educate ourselves with regards how we could develop as a nation and really, really, focus on the real issues, life.
And
Unfortunately.
The point needs to be made as well that while we pay attention to road fatalities, there are many other road accidents that takes place, and we end up with people who are physically disabled, physically
Seriously
challenged,
disabled.
because of it, and we don't factor that in at all. We just deal with fatalities when we talk about road accidents, and that's another serious issue that we need to deal with.
That's why your site is such an important resource. We are looking, unfortunately, we are out of time for this segment of it. I love the idea of talking about intelligent roads because that includes finding a path for people to walk on. And a lot of our roads don't have that. And of course, you're endangering a whole lot of passes, folks who are walking pedestrians. But Sharon Inglefield, it's been so great to have you here. Your site is a wonderful one. It is full of information. It actually worked as my guidepost, and then Sharmain said to me, "Oh, look up there." I said, "Oh, I've been up there already." So everyone knows what's happening with your site and the work that you're doing. Thank you so much for taking the time to be with us
Thank you
this
so much
morning.
for having us on.